All right, Matt. So, big signing. We've talked about the lawsuit around the exact same time. Some people are speculating it was planned. I don't know, but around that same time, as the hearing was talking about whether or not there'd be class certification or not, Dana White announces on SportsCenter that the UFC has a major signing: former Bellator lightweight champion Michael Chandler. This is a huge deal, especially because it's arguably one of Bellator's best champions or fighters going over to the UFC. What are your initial thoughts on this?
My initial thoughts was like, man, that is a very big signing for the UFC. Like it's been a while since we've had one like this major. I mean, Michael Chandler's been with Bellator since 2010. That is a whole decade under that promotion. You pretty much carried their flag. And in times where we thought that Michael Chandler may have gone to the UFC in earlier days, he was like, nah, I'm sticking with Bellator. Like I'm the guy here. I'm going to stay here and do my thing. Keep putting on exciting fights, win or lose, win more than lose, obviously. But of course, now fast forward to 2020, the champion just coming off of a fantastic performance against Benson Henderson, former UFC champion. You walk away as the champ from Bellator after all these years to come in to being the immediate backup for a title fight, which is very, very interesting. When that news all came together, I was like, wow, the UFC is super high on Michael Chandler, as well they should be. He's a guy that I've long believed can compete in the top 10 in the UFC. So it looks like we're going to get to see that in very short order. So what were your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was crazy because I never, Michael Chandler has always said, maybe I'll go over there, but always stuck with Bellator. It seemed that they always got the numbers right. Everything just seemed to line up. This time around, he seemed more so than usual open to leaving, but I still never thought in 1,000 years that he would go to the UFC. I mean, the fact that I guess he didn't have the belt in Bellator because Patricio had beat him, so he didn't have the actual belt under him. Maybe gives him some leeway to go do that. Maybe it's a little less payday for some of his fights. That could be it. But and Patricio's obviously tied up right now in the featherweight division where he's also champ. So that could have played some factors. To see him over there, and especially as you mentioned, as an immediate backup fighter to a title fight. So if Justin Gaethje or Khabib pull out for any reason, he just gets an immediate lightweight title shot, which is arguably the most stacked division in the UFC. That's crazy on so many levels. Like you said, they've got to be bonkers high on him. I know that they had initially offered Dustin Poirier to fight Michael Chandler. Dustin Poirier has obviously had some issues with the UFC and pay regarding the Tony Ferguson fight that's now officially off. But so I guess after that fight didn't materialize, now you've got Michael Chandler, sitting as a backup to a title fight. Now, another thing here that's important to mention and that I want to get your thoughts on is that, he's coming from Bellator where they do have some drug testing. They do have things like that, but they don't have USADA. So for him to come in straight off the signing and be lined up for a potential title fight when I don't know that he's been in the USADA pool. I don't assume he's been in the USADA pool here. And unless we missed something where he joined USADA on his own volition some time ago, that's kind of a big deal, is it not? Could there be an issue there? Well, what are your thoughts about that?
No, that's a huge deal. And I did misspeak earlier saying that he was champion leaving Bellator. Neither here nor there. Thank you for clearing that up. But the USADA thing is interesting because I'm seeing a lot of people confused on this issue when it comes to how long you have to be in the USADA pool when you're a new signee coming over from another promotion into the UFC. So a lot of the confusion is that you have to be in the pool for 6 months, and that's not true. You have to only be in the pool for 6 months if you retired from the UFC or if you are entering the USADA testing pool with a history or admitted use of performance-enhancing substances. The rule is if you come in as a new fighter, you have to be available for testing for 1 month. Okay. So that's for your first bout. And that doesn't even apply if you are listed as a backup fighter. So, and also not to get too confusing here, but with the 6-month thing that I just mentioned, the UFC can waive that if they feel like it. So it's really you're looking at 1 month here. And, all of this stuff is easily searchable online, folks. Go to Google. I can share the link. I can tweet it out for you if you guys need it. But just search up UFC anti-doping policy. It's section 57.1.2 all the way through 6. All that's listed right there in plain text for you to figure that out. But yeah, 1 month is what we're looking at for Michael Chandler. If you were a new fighter, and we see new fighters come in all the time for short notice fights, less than a week, 6 days notice, 5 days notice. Hey, how did you get around that testing pool? It's easy. The UFC, they do what they want essentially when it comes to that. But just to clear all that up for some folks out there that may have been confused, there is no 6-month waiting period when you're a new fighter coming in. Like I said, unless if you have that history of admitted use.
Yeah, and that makes sense, especially when we've seen this year with so many Contender Series fighters, fighting 2 weeks after their Contender Series bout. It's possible they were in the USADA pool beforehand, and but it makes much more sense that because they haven't actually had a contract signed, because you don't know who's going to win, right? Mm-hmm. That if they get a contract signed and then they're fighting in a week or two, there's got to be some leeway there. So it sounds like you've done your research and you've educated the masses. So we appreciate that as always.
For sure.
I got to ask, right? Chandler's coming in as a backup fighter, big name. He did get, knocked out or a TKO. He said he wasn't out the Patricio fight. Since then, he's been on a finish spree. Looked really good, especially against, Benson Henderson. A lot of people expected that to go to decision. He just went in there and finished him. If he gets a title shot against Gaethje or Khabib, because one of them falls out, let's go both of them. Against Gaethje or Khabib, how does Michael Chandler do? What do you think?
Oh, man. Wow. Whew, I think there'd be interesting fights. I'm going to side with the champion. Obviously, if Khabib comes in, that's going to be probably the most interesting matchup for me, just to see, two wrestlers just in there trying to see who's got the advantage on the ground and in the mat in the clinch. Obviously, I think Chandler's a better striker, but would that matter? Flip side with Gaethje is definitely the better striker, and he's got that wrestling background himself. I am like, those are both intriguing matchups, but I don't want to see either one of those be his first, splash into the UFC. I want to see him against somebody else in the top 5, somebody else in the top 10. Like, okay, all right, yeah, you can do it at this stage too, just to prove it to us. And do you do it like you did Benson Henderson on your last time out? Because if so, all right, yeah, put Gaethje in the next time, put Khabib in the next time. Let's see it. They would both be very interesting matchups. I don't think anybody gets out of there quickly. I think they'd be tough fights, probably decision, maybe, but they'd be very, very entertaining at the very least. So I don't know. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think I'd have to go Justin or Khabib, especially with, how dominant Khabib's been. And then Justin's looked incredible since his last loss. It's hard. He looks like a brand new fighter the way he's been fighting. So it's very hard not to side with one of those two, especially given Bellator's competition level not exactly being at the same level. As good as Chandler is, and I think everyone could recognize that he's, a top 10, top 15 guy in the UFC. I don't know that translates over in the exact same way that, he's ready to fight a champion. I'm with you there 100%. In terms of who I would like to see him fight, and I'm going to throw this back to you once I answer this, is I would love to see, I think Dan Hooker is a perfect matchup for him as a good entry level to see which side of that top 5 he falls on. Does Hooker go in there, easily decision him, so he's looking at, bottom 6 to 15, somewhere in that range? Does he go in there and just beat Hooker, no problem? And then you're looking at it, Dustin Poirier, Tony Ferguson, title eliminator type fight, totally possible. But I think that's a great barometer, especially with how well Hooker's improved lately. That's a good matchup for him to go in there and test to see where he belongs in the UFC. What about you? Who do you want to see him fight?
Well, now that the UFC has put they've kind of solidified what they think of him already, right? Back up to a title fight immediately. So that tells me top 5 opponent, right? You nailed it right there. Number 5 being Dan Hooker. Since you went that route, I'm going to go another route. I'm going to go a step higher. Actually, 2 steps higher, because number 4 is Conor McGregor, and who knows what Conor's doing. So number 3 is obviously the guy who doesn't have a fight right now, Tony Ferguson. Why not book that fight? Why not just book that one outright? That's the confusing thing about all of this to me, is you can't come to terms with Dustin Poirier. Tony Ferguson says he's right there. He's ready to go. Obviously, Chandler's ready to go if he's ready to be a backup. So sounds like a main event fight to me for a fight night card or co-main of a pay-per-view. I don't know. Seems like it's an easy thing to make, but I don't know. Apparently, according to Dana White, he said Tony Ferguson just stopped communicating with them, and that's why they couldn't get a deal done. I don't know. I don't know who to believe, but it seems like to me, Tony Ferguson's right there for the taking. If you think so high of him to be the backup for a title fight, schedule that one.
Yeah, that's hard to argue with, and I also don't know who to believe there, whether it's Dana or, you know, because I could see Tony doing that. I mean, right? You can see Tony just being like, I'm going to go off into the woods and train and not communicate with anybody for a week. So very possible that happened. But yeah, I like that fight a lot too. Either way, no matter who Chandler fights, it should be interesting. We're going to learn real quick, you know, where arguably the best fighter in Bellator's, you know, at least in terms of a mainstay champion type, lands. Because we've had others that have, you know, we had Hector Lombard, we had Will Brooks, you know, suffer those setbacks. You know, so I think either of those guys is a great introduction into the UFC to see, you know, where he's at.
Not only that, I mean, one guy that we can't forget about, Eddie Alvarez, and his connection to Michael Chandler. Obviously, they had some great wars in Bellator. But hey, that's a guy who also came over from Bellator, was able to win that strap, and who also lost his first fight in the UFC. So just saying, you lose your first one out, might not be such a bad thing. But, you know, interesting fights all around for Michael Chandler for sure. I can't wait to see what happens first. Yeah,
it's no matter any way you look at it, the lightweight division just got more stacked. So can't be mad about that.
Facts.